Hi everyone, in the room of Serafillo and also connected people. We are now going on the conference with a session called Evaluation and Co-Development of Water Management Strategies. And for this session, we got, normally it's planned to have 4 speakers. So, Romain Leclercq, who is just next to me, will start his presentation. And then we'll have the speech of Eleni Toli, who I think is connected with us. We got a third team, but I don't know if somebody from the third team is connected. So if you are, just please make a sign on the comment section of the Zoom. And finally, we will have a presentation about Sri Lanka from Isurika Sevwandi. And sorry for my accent if I made some mistake with your name, and you will tell us how to spell it. So, because we got some delay, as you can see, I suggest that we start now by the presentation of Romain Leclercq.
Your whole screen, yes. No, your whole screen. Okay.
Okay. Your mic is on? No, it's off.
Yeah, I will. No, from Zoom, from your left.
Yeah, but I try to just switch to the other slide.
Sorry. Really sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go. You can hear me? Yeah, that's okay. Nice. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Romain Leclercq. I'm an urban sociologist and a postdoctoral researcher at the Health Politics Centers in Paris. And I realized my PhD on the question of floods in the suburbs of Dakar in Senegal. Because, I mean, some neighborhoods of these suburbs are affected by floods for like 30 years. And in this presentation, I will try to, because when I was there, I followed an NGO that tried to implement some participation projects to trying to solve this problem of floods in a municipality there. And so in this presentation, I will try to differentiate 2 kinds of participation processes. Because when we are starting to speak about climate change, etc., there is also this participation part in a lot of projects, but often the participation process in these kind of topics are a bit presented as a quiet process, really like technical process more than political one, etc. And so participation processes, as we saw it this morning, are often like very political and conflicting, etc. So in order to see that, I tried to differentiate 2 kinds of participation process, which are called the one is a forum, and another one is a platform. And I will try to explain the differences between them, especially the differences between different kind of decision making and community structuring process, to basically answer the question like, who are the community that are involved in these different kind of processes? Also, what kind of we can say assemblage or adjustment that are in progress in these processes, and also how these processes are designed to achieve some goals, to target some specific goals. And so I will try to do it now. Okay. So we will try to do it in 3 phases. First of all, I will give you a brief some brief explanations about the floods in the suburbs of Dakar. Then we will try to see what is the first participation process that I call the forum, which is mainly a process that are structured around the exploration of the causes and the solutions of a public problem, floods constructed as a public problem. And then we will try to see what is the platform process, which is more a participation process, trying to connect, in this case, international donors' concerns with community needs. And we will see what are the differences between them. So as you can see on the screen, this is the suburbs of Dakar, and the blue parts are the flooded zone in 2009. And I mainly did my research on this part of the city, which is called Djidah-Thiaroye-Kao, which is a city in itself. Yeah. So the floods in the suburbs of Dakar. For 40 years now, some neighborhoods are affected by floods, as you can see on the screen. On the right side, you can see that, so this is a street, a flooded street, and you can see that this is an expression of an episodic event. Like each rainy seasons, some of neighborhoods are affected by floods. So there is some episodic events like this. But on the photo on the left side, you can see also that it is not just episodic events, it's also a creeping phenomenon that made that water have settled in some neighborhood, and they are permanently changed the face of the city. As you can see here, this is an abandoned neighborhood which is now occupied by water, and so the people that were living there left. So this is okay, and this is an expanding phenomenon also. I mean, the flooded zone are expanding each year, at least between the beginning of the 90s and the end of 2010. So in this context, from the beginning of the years 2000, and especially from 2005, the floods started to increase, and it led to a lot of contestation, mobilizations of inhabitants trying to claim for mainly the state for him to solve this problem. So in 2005, in Djidah-Thiaroye-Kao, so the city where I led my inquiries, some groups of inhabitants started to investigate the problem of floods, started to try to understand what is at stake in this problem. I mean, what are the causes, why there is some floods there. They gathered with a Swiss NGO and started to try to solve a twofold problem. One is the effect of the floods, how to understand and how to solve this problem. And another one is the effect of the state program led to fight against the floods. Because at this time, it was eviction programs mainly. That's to say that the state, seeing that there is some flood-prone area, tried to solve the problem, saying, okay, we just need to displace people that are living in flood-prone area, displace them, erase their house, and displace them on the outskirts of the city. These inhabitants tried to solve these two problems that were connected. Okay, so how did they do? Sorry. They started to investigate the causes of the floods, and they started to involve in their inquiry some other elements, because at this time, the main explanation to the floods was, okay, there is floods because in the 70s, 80s, there were a drought period, like there were no rain anymore. Then at the end of the 80s, the rain began to, started again. And so it flooded some neighborhoods. That was the main reason in the public space. But what this NGO and this inhabitants groups found is that the rain was not only the only responsible for this situation. They started to evaluate the role of the groundwater table, which were under the whole neighborhood. The groundwater table, I mean the underwater. And they started to see that the level of this groundwater table has risen during this year for different reasons that I don't have the time to explain, but we can discuss about it after. So they started to say, okay, so the rain are not the only responsibles, the groundwater table is also responsible. And so what we need to do is to act at the scale of the groundwater table. So the scale of the phenomenon changed. Before we were trying to solve this problem at the scale of neighborhood, of part of neighborhood that were flooded, and now the problem was at the scale of the groundwater table, and so at the regional scale, because this is pretty large. So they start to involve some groundwater table. Also, from 2010, they started to involve some institutions that could deal with the problem at this case. So they started to involve in their process the regional council, because, well, that was a regional problem. And they started also to try to involve some institutions like ministries of urbanism, etc., and then the state, to help them to pump again the groundwater table, because if the groundwater table rises, it's mainly because before it was pumped and the pumping has stopped. I don't know if it's really clear, but we can, okay. Saying that, they're starting to say, okay, we have this problem at the regional level, but also we have the problem of the eviction at the city level, because we want, some people will be displaced. That's obligé. That's yeah. Some people will be displaced, but we want them to stay in their neighborhood. So build again some houses in their neighborhood. So they started to involve some community leaders, like as you can see on this photo, and started to say, okay, so the problem is regional, the problem is also urban. So we will try to reach public institutions by doing a master plan, urbanism plan. And so they started to do it at the community level. So there was a long process of dividing the city in different parts, trying to build representative committee, more or less, etc. A lot of workshops, urbanism workshop that has been led, etc., in order to do this document. And that's I mean, they achieved the production through a 3 years project of one of the most clear and the most precise urban master plan of the Senegal that you can see. Well, this is one of the maps that they built on the left part of the screen. So I called this kind of participation process, and we have to say also that during this process, of course, the community is represented by some people, which in this case are mainly, men from a certain age with a certain social status. Most of the representatives was some formal workers, which is not as usual in this area, etc. So I call this process a forum, because it's mainly about trying to gather some actors around a public problem, that is to say, an ongoing problem and we will try to extend step by step the problem, the person that we want to involve, the elements also that we want to involve, like the groundwater table, etc., trying to reach the institution that we think are able to solve the problem at the scale that we will explore. So this is kind of an open debate process, okay? And the fact is that after 2013, this group of inhabitants and NGO has to shift toward a second project. And they also call it a participatory one with kind of the same objective. The objectives was to solve the flooding problem in the municipality, etc. But they started to say, okay, what's the next step? So, and also the all groups, I mean, the groups has changed during this whole process, etc. So the actor was not really the same. Some inhabitant has created an NGO. So now there were a Swiss NGO and a Senegalese NGO that were leading this new participation project. And so they started also to join a big NGO network promoting community finance to improve slum neighborhoods, okay? So the question for them was how to apply this community finance solution to these flooding problems. So they start to say, okay, we will use community finance to rebuild some houses that were affected by floods within the city, but not at the city scale in a certain way, at the household scale. Okay. Okay, so I will try to do it quick. So how did they do that? Savings, community saving is quite common in Dakar. It's mainly an affair of women savings group that are gathering together to save little money and to share loans between them, I mean, rotating saving groups, etc. So they start to gather some of this group in the municipality of Djiddah-Tiaroukao, and they start to build with this group a federation, okay? A federation of these saving groups. Through this federation, they start to attract some donors, international donors' money to give loans to some households to rebuild their homes, okay? And of course, the individual beneficiary, as they say, will reimburse the loans, which is a loan, in order for him to rebuild his house. So what is interesting here is that that's the same, I mean, kind of a participatory project, but we see that it's not the same nature of the first one. I called it a platform because the whole point was to build a kind of relevant stakeholder, the federation, for international donors. That is to say, one actor, one stakeholder, which could represent by itself the population of Djiddah-Tiaroukao, but not for, let's say, national institution, but for international donors, for them to attract money to allow them to rebuild their house. Yeah. And another part of this process was also to build an infrastructure, a loans infrastructure, in order to allow these international donors to connect directly with the needs of this communities, okay? And so the whole point of this infrastructure was to try to attune, to harmonize the donors' concerns about empowerment, about gender equality, for instance, because the huge majority of these groups are made of women, etc., with some needs that are also attuned with this concern about, let's say, homes, etc. And this was made with an whole process of questionnaire, building like kind of how to say it, building some relevant solutions, etc., very adapted to the local context, etc. But then the whole point of this process was this connection, and it was not anymore the public debate, for instance. Okay. Yes, that's so. To conclude on this south, just to say that in these two projects we saw that even if these are two participatory projects with the same population, with the same intermediary actors, which are the NGOs, and the same object, the same municipality, etc. This is two very different kind of participation process. And why is it important? It's because I don't know which is the better one, and actually they achieved a lot. They both reach impressive results. But so in one case there is this kind of public-oriented, public problem-oriented process, and in the other case there is this kind of market-oriented process, infrastructure building-oriented process. Because in the second assemblage, the platform one, the local institutions, for instance, are not even required in the whole process. They could be partners if they want. They could be involved in some way, but they are not like relevant institution or I don't know, relevant stakeholders of this whole process. So just to highlight this fact, and to also say that highlighting the fact that these are two highly political process. And also the fact that finally the participation process, I will stop here, the participation process is producing their own stakeholders. And that's a big question, because when we saw in a lot of different projects, okay, we need to involve stakeholders, okay, but who are they? Have you got their numbers, etc.? Which community is that, etc.? So the question for me is who, how, and to do what, as I emphasized it in this last slide. Thank you.
Merci, Romain. Thank you very much. You can clap the hands online as well. And I suggest we move on with the next presentation. If, of course, you got some question to address to Romain and for every speakers of the session, feel free to fulfill the QA sections or the comments. So, Eleni Toli, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, I can hear you. I've started my video and I'm just about to share also my screen.
Telia. Perfect.
Okay. And now also in presentation mode. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, should be okay now. Okay, hello, my name is Eleni Toli. I'm a research associate at the Athena Research Center, which is the Greek ICT, the Greek, sorry, apologies for my voice, it's winter, there are a lot of flus going around. It's the Greek Research Center for ICT Research, and focusing mainly on open research, on any open research aspects related to ICT, but also in other domains. And at Athena, we have a dedicated unit, the Sustainable Development Unit, where we deal with issues related to ICT solutions for sustainable cities, for sustainable futures, related to climate change, related to, in general, to sustainability issues. So what I'm going to present today is a work that we do in the EU-funded project, research project Desira. As it is a conference about participatory design, I believe I have to pay credit to all our colleagues who have worked on this, and it's really, it is a collaborative work, and this is what I want to stress also with all the names here on the title slide. So to put a little bit the context of our work, Desira is a project that tries to assess the socioeconomic impact of digitalization in rural areas. And to put the context, this is our starting point. Although we are assessing the digitalization, we understand digital transformation as a process that not only creates winners, but also losers, and maybe also people who are opponents to this digital transformation process. And this is very important. It is very important to understand this fact, so that you can also then involve the communities affected in a proper way, understand their needs, and also on the other way around to understand clearly what are the ICT benefits and challenges for the particular communities. So Desira is a heavily community-oriented project. You will, as I mentioned, our goal is to improve the capacity of the society to respond to the challenges posed by digital transformation. And by digital transformation, we mean digital solutions of any kind, starting at infrastructure level, but going up into also the single device level. And we would like, our aim is to impact at several levels, the civil society at large, but also public authorities, especially at local and regional level, but also private businesses. This is how we see that we can achieve our goals and achieve our outcomes, by impacting on all these levels in parallel. So I don't know if we can talk about humanizing digitalization. Maybe it is too ambitious for a single project to achieve. But for us, it's really important the understanding that digitalization is not the effect of innovation uptake, but digitalization is a transformation of a socio-technical system. You will see further down in my next slides, the socio-technical physical aspects are an important component of our work. This means that if a digital technology has a game-changing effect, if it can effectively change societies to a large degree, this does not depend only on the technology per se, but also this depends on the specific conditions and the local context where this technology is applied. So we want to improve the capacity of especially rural communities to co-shape these digitalization processes, so that they have also a say on how their society, how their area will evolve and will look like in a decade from now. This means that our approach is rather the opposite of what is happening today to a large extent. Today we say, okay, technology is an end as it's in itself, which means we have the technologies, and based on the technologies, we try to identify the challenges and opportunities. We say, what is the challenge and opportunity we need to address? And based on this, what is the suitable technology to do this? Maybe there is no technology at all, no existing technology, or maybe there is even no need to apply a technology. For for us, this is an open issue that we tackle and we discuss in our project with the communities we are involved in. For doing this, we model all the actors that are involved in this ecosystem. We say our work is related to the socio-cyber-physical system, which means the people, the data, and the things that are the physical aspects of this ecosystem. All this We need to understand how they interrelate and how they work and affect the one the other in order to really work towards sustainable futures. We do this by running 20 living labs across Europe. In Greece, we have 2 living labs. Today, we present you the living lab related, anyway, the 2 living labs. One of the 2 living labs is related to sustainable water management in the region of Trikala, which fits very well also to the aspects and to the focus of this particular session. And the second one is in the area of Peradeniya in northern Greece. It discusses how can we develop digital services for farmer and rural communities. So what we do in the living labs is that we map the socio-cyber-physical system for each living lab, which means that we identify who are the actors, what are the components, how do they interrelate. And here you can see this mapping for each one of these 2 living labs. And then having mapped the ecosystem, then together with the people involved in each living lab and the people who are leading this living lab, because it is not us only, we are of course supporting this, but the living lab is led by local people or by people who have close collaborations with local and the rural communities. We formulate the focal question, which means what is the main aspect we would like to deal with in this living lab? The very broad aspect, which will then be broken down into particular steps and activities and needs analysis, so that we develop, after all, a conceptual framework. And we do this, we organize and we develop this conceptual framework in order to understand how did the territory look like 10 years ago? How does it look like today? And how will it look like, what we would like to have in 10 years from now? Here you can see a schematic representation of a conceptual framework, and you can see what are the possible, it's an abstract representation, whereas what I saw in the previous 2 slides, these are really the actors and the entities that participate in these 2 living labs we are working on here in Greece. Here, this is an abstract representation. Tries to capture what are the possible elements of this ecosystem, and the important question is how did it start, where we are now, and what we want to achieve, where do we want to be in 10 years from now, in terms of sustainability of our rural environment. For doing this, we have a highly participatory approach. We plan scenarios, we develop scenarios, and we develop scenarios together with the people that are affected in their area, which means that we bring together the scenario planners, which are the members of the living lab. We identify a question, a scenario question, based, of course, on the main living lab focal question. We check what has happened regarding this question until now. We identify what are the things that we don't know or we cannot be sure how they will evolve. We develop scenarios and also consider what could be the difficulties or the implication we will see. So this, based on this, we define what we call the limits of plausibility, which means a range of scenarios, starting with the best case scenario and the worst case scenario, and also developing some business as usual scenarios in between. As I said, this is really a co-development process together with the living lab participants, and it is important to understand that we start with we describe how the system is. We try to understand why the system is in this way, And we also try to clarify the why, not the how at this stage, not how we can change the system, how we can impact, but why things are the way they are. For example, talking about rural communities in the Peradeniya area, and digital transformation of the area, we do not only talk about the sensors we implement in the fields and how the work or the life of farmers will be changed, but we also investigate scenarios that says, how can digital tools and digital transformation help the life of women living in this area? Will the life of women be affected if we have more digital technologies implemented not only on the fields, but also in the village? And so this is to give you an example of our approach. Once having identified the focal question, we discuss with the Living Lab participants, what are their needs? What are the expectations? We identify what they want to have changed. And based on this, we define our objectives, we develop a scenario, we develop scenarios and stories about how would we like to have our future and what is possible to have in the future, both scenarios. And based on this, again, we take some actions, we make some recommendations, and in order to clearly describe what is the future situation, again, in the particular region, not in whole Greece, but for the area of Trikala with regard to sustainable water management, and for the area of Katerini with regards to digital technology for farmer and rural communities. And with the support, with the help of the Living Lab participants, we try to describe the evolvement of the system as it is now to a system to be. So how we would like to have that the system looks like in 10 years from now. In our project, we are now in the process of developing the scenarios. We have run several activities until now with the Living Labs. We organized the workshops in order to identify needs, to understand the situation, to identify and set the objectives. And now we are in the process of developing scenarios. And out of these scenarios, we will develop a number of digital stories. So we invite you to check our project website in 2 or 3 months from now, where you can see the digital stories about several areas of Europe, how we can, together with the communities, design the future in a sustainable way. So thank you very much. I hope it was not too fast because I tried to keep the time. I don't know if I managed to.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you very much, Eleni. Now, just a quick call for Saida Hammami Habibi, Faiza Khebour Allouche, and Amira Hamdaoui. If you're connected, please open your mic and camera and say hi, because I can't hear you on the Zoom. Second call for Saida Hammami Habibi, Faiza Khebour Allouche, Amira Hamdaoui, if you can hear me. So, I can see that the next speaker is connected. If I don't make a mistake, Isurika. So I suggest we move on to your presentation. Isurika, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Ah, okay. I suggest we move to Isurika presentation since you are ready. Okay, thank you. And sorry for the bad spelling maybe of your name, but you will tell us. So you got 10 minutes, 12 maximum, if possible. Thank you.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. I'm Isurika Sevwandi from the Faculty of Arts, University of Peradeniya, and I'm today presenting about the students' perception on urban green landscape, a case study of University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. Okay, so let's move on to the introduction section. So urban green spaces, as we all are very much familiar with because of this conference and as we are researchers related to that field, urban green spaces are areas within an urban environment which can comprise of grass, trees, shrubs or other vegetation. And these vegetated areas within an urban fabric could include parks, lawns, street trees, residential gardens, cemeteries, sports fields, green walls, green roofs, and so many things according to the cultural context of any kind of city. So urban landscape is a complex structure which is a result of the interaction between human and their physical environment. So urban green spaces and landscapes in academic institutions actually provide invaluable opportunities for academic discussions, recreation, and immersion in a naturalistic atmosphere. So amidst an immensely stressful and competitive setting. So that's why I was actually interested in exploring the perceptions regarding the green landscapes in the university students. So let me provide you a brief introduction to the University of Peradeniya because you all might not be familiar with that. So it is the largest and the oldest university in Sri Lanka. So it actually covers about 700 hectares, but the building space is about 130 hectares. And as I mentioned, it is the oldest university that was established in 1942, but it was actually moved to Peradeniya in 1952. Which is known as the first as the University of Ceylon, and it still possesses a pristine urban nature and slightly modified natural landscape, as you can see with the aid of these photographs. Actually, these photographs are not taken from any kind of botanical garden. These are genuine photographs of the University of Peradeniya, so you can have a glimpse into its natural beauty. So I would like to highlight that Sir Ivor Jennings, who was the first vice chancellor of this university, on his first visit to this campus site during 1944, with a site plan with the architect Sir Patrick Abercrombie. Actually, he has written in his diary that no university in the world would have such a setting. If you could come and visit, actually, you would understand how spectacular the view and how picturesque it is. My objective was actually to study the university students' genuine perception, nothing exaggerated, their genuine perception regarding this unique natural environment and its existing landscapes, because it is slightly modified than the landscape it had a decade ago in terms of planning and assessment. That means how would students assess and how would students provide some suggestions regarding the futuristic planning of the landscape of the University of Peradeniya. So these are again photographs from the university itself. This is the Senate building, the administrative block, and this is the road in front of the Senate building as you move here. And this is my department, the Department of Geography during the flowering season. This is a side view, so you can have an idea about the beauty of the University of Peradeniya. So regarding the methodology part, actually, it was conducted as an online photo-based semi-structured questionnaire, and I utilized JotForm virtual platform to create the questionnaire form. And the research questions were actually formulated after a research literature survey with international literature, and the photos were taken actually during April 2021, and the data collection period was during mid-April to mid-May 2021. So I took photographs regarding the surrounding of the administrative block area and the common amenities area, which is so-called, we call it as the University Park area, because even if I capture any photographs from any faculty or department or any unit, then the students who would voluntarily participate in this survey would have some kind of biasness towards their faculty, and they would provide some interest regarding their faculty or department. So I took care of that I considered only the photographs of the University Park area. So respondents were actually took part in this survey on voluntary basis. So I just sent them the link to the JotForm, their WhatsApp groups, chats, and email threads. So they voluntarily took part without any force. So these are some photographs of the JotForm that I utilized. You can see the types of questions that I utilized and the so-called the first impression of the questionnaire sheet. So these are the structural vegetation types that I utilized. Actually, I mentioned 7 structural vegetation types in my photo preference survey. These are some samples of those photographs. For example, for each of those 7 structural vegetation types, I provided them with 5 photographs. So, and I asked them to rank them according to their preference and their experience with these places. And I also asked them not to consider about the photo quality, because sometimes it could indirectly have an impact towards their photo preference. But I advised them in advance not to consider about the photo quality, but to refer to the exact place that the photo is referring to and mention their preference and ranking for that. So moving on to the respondents' demographics, as you can see here, because it was voluntary basis, no selection was done. Most of the participants, respondents were actually from female group, 85%, and male only, it was 15%. And these are the respondents' demographics regarding their faculty. Actually, you can see that most of the students were from Faculty of Arts, and 19% from Engineering, and 15% from the Agriculture faculty, and about 18% from the Science faculty. And you can see the medical field, like Allied Health Sciences, Dental faculty, Medical faculty, and Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. Actually, they responded a bit less than the other faculties. So as I mentioned, the majority of the participants, actually their academic interest was well inclined towards environmental subjects. For example, when I asked about the department, most of the students from the Faculty of Arts were from the Department of Geography, and regarding the students from the Faculty of Science, they were based on the industrial science and the environmental science. And most of the engineering faculty students were having their academic inclination towards the environmental engineering. That means the people who took part in this survey were having kind of inclination towards environmental dimensions. So actually the survey participants represented both genders, and they were both undergraduate and postgraduate students from both social sciences and STEM disciplines, because at the Faculty of Arts, we have 17 departments covering both humanities subjects and social sciences. So as I mentioned, I asked them not to consider about the photo quality when considering when they were making their preferences. So just to have a little bit idea about the context where the University of Peradeniya is located actually. So University of Peradeniya is actually located at Kandy, Sri Lanka, so which is adjacent to the India, as you might all know. It's a tiny island in the mighty Indian Ocean, and you can see that Greece is located, and you can see kind of setting, South Asian setting where the University of Peradeniya is located. So this is exactly the map of University of Peradeniya. You see the 700 hectares, how it is dispersed, and this is actually the university reservation site. And some people, you can find some settlements as well in this area, but I only considered this area. Here you can see the Senate building and this area as my research track. So all the photographs were taken from this area because it is the actually functional area. So moving on to the research findings, students had identified the University of Peradeniya as the Garden University of Sri Lanka because it is the oldest university and it is the largest university and it's the best university. Actually, if you can go for the QS World Rankings, the situation in Sri Lanka, it's the best university right now in Sri Lanka. But you can see 88%, 88.2% of the students rank the university as a Garden University of Sri Lanka rather than its biggest extent or the oldest nature or their academic performances. So that is something we need to consider. So this is a screenshot that I took today morning. So you can see the ranking system in Sri Lanka. In most of the systems, it is the #1 university, but students still consider it as the Garden University rather than its intellectual performance. So students' perception on urban green space is deeper, and this is something fascinating because when I asked how do you feel about the urban green spaces at the University of Peradeniya, they considered, all of their responses considered both physical and mental relaxation cum satisfaction. That means they didn't only mention about the aesthetic beauty of the university, but they had kind of utilitarian value, like what is the importance of green spaces, how do they utilize in their day-to-day life the green spaces, and how do they actually perceive the green spaces, do they need to be in increased, or do they need to be diminished and have more kind of closed spaces? So they actually had a kind of utilitarian perspective regarding that. And students had stressed on keywords in their response, like they had mental and physical well-being because of the green spaces, and they're so eye-catching and mind-relaxing, and they're providing ecosystem services, and they observe the diversity of tree canopy and multiple vegetation types. So they would like to sit and have academic discussions and do practicals even in the open spaces. So they define green spaces in the University of Peradeniya using these keywords. And it's noteworthy that students tend to define the university in terms of this natural beauty rather than anything. So also these direct quotations prove that their ideology, that it's the green garden, it's a gift of nature, it's a green sheet, and I can tell University of Peradeniya is the natural green university, like they admire this greenness of the university rather than anything. So here also you can see their preference regarding those structural vegetation types. So you see 34%, 34.3% of them like the sparse graph vegetation type photographs. And when we consider about the reasons behind their like majority preference regarding this sparse graph structural vegetation type, they actually mentioned that they love the openness. So here you can see the photographs that are utilized regarding the sparse graph vegetation type. So they love the openness, and there was natural tree cover as well, and they might have felt the air moisture and the cooling breeze around these spaces. So they highlighted these aspects of this sparse graph structural vegetation, and they asked, they had the idea that they need most of these structural vegetation type around the university. And so this photo, as you can see in the second photo, was the one which had 1/5 of the overall preference from about 350 student responses. So the underlying reasons behind this preference indicated kind of personal memories associated with this place and their first impression, because this is actually during the flowering season. Most of the students get registered at the university during this flowering season, and at first actually they fell in love with this like blooming beauty of the university, and they might have some kind of like as you can see here, the human presence as well. They just come and relax here. They would have some interesting like chit chats with their like colleagues, and they would have some meet and mingle around this area. So they had kind of like a sense of belongingness to these photographs and this nature. And also the photographs have the sunlight, openness, human presence. It contains trees, grass, veins, flowers, everything, the sky, and represent both the human and natural environmental aspects. So that is what they actually treasure. And participatory planning suggestions provided by the university students regarding the green landscape. You can see initiating small-scale community-based planting endeavors, and preserving the existing canopy cover was their main suggestions. That means they really want to preserve the existing green cover, and they would like to engage in community-based tree planting endeavors. So this suggestion actually came from the students. So that is something that even the administrators should consider. So if we can move on to the conclusion part, as I'm running out of time, community participation is vital in comprehensively understanding the intangible value of the urban green landscape in the university. It's important that students have identified this intangible value rather than the other academic aspects. And students are an important and potential pressure group who can demand more sustainable green landscape for the university. So they should understand, and it was highlighted by themselves, that they have the potential and they should demand from the university administrators not to diminish the existing green cover and enhance it. And futuristic initiatives should encourage stakeholder involvement from every tier, like even the academicians, even the non-academic staff members, and the student groups should understand that they are a part of the whole stakeholder group, and they should raise their voices when the administratives are taking decisions, and they should be part of that active discussion, because they all are equally benefited and obligatory bound to preserve this, because they all are actually taking advantages of this urban green landscapes. So these are some implications for the futuristic plans. Even though students didn't mention the terminology nature-based solutions, it is the approach that they were indirectly suggesting for the future physical planning at the university. And they stressed about the preserving the existing nature and planting new trees in replacement of old dying trees, because still the university area has trees that are like having the age of like more than 100 years, which are now dying because of the like recent the floods and landslides impacts as well. And the proper maintenance of both plants and landscapes. New construction should not disturb the existing weave of nature, because when we open a window from any kind of building at the University of Peradeniya, you see nature and you hear bird chirps, and it's so fascinating, and they would not want to disturb that weave. And the regulatory mechanism to monitor the behavior of outsiders which come to university premises, because at the university the students have their own subculture which is protecting even the grassroots at the university. So when the outsiders come, actually there should be a regulatory mechanism to make them aware to like not to disturb this pristine environment at the university. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention. And I would like to thank all the organizers for providing me this opportunity to share this work to an international audience. And I enjoyed the whole conference yesterday and the day before yesterday as well. And I'm thankful for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isurika. If anyone got questions, we will have a really short time at the end to answer them. So we move on now to the next presentation. Saida, can you hear us? Saida Hammami Habibi. I think that my colleague saw you connected. Mm-hmm. Normally, you are promoted as a panelist, so you have to accept your promotion, not to reject it. Can you? Okay, I can see you in the panelist, among the panelists. Okay, can you hear us?
Thank you. Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Your voice is really low here. Okay, can just make a short, say something if we can. Hello.
Hello, oui. Bon.
Okay.
Just, I will share the presentation.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry to remind it every time, but if you can be brief, it would be perfect.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Just make full screen and it's perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Our presentation has title Green Strategies for a Resilient and Sustainable City. So I will present the plan. The first, the factors of vulnerability of city. The second, I will speak about Tunisian cities and green spaces. The third, green strategy, and finally, the case of archipelago of Kirknam, a palm tree as a life. So here we have a map. Sorry, world map, and we can see global warming and the most risk we can look it in Africa, and Tunisia is the part of the countries it risk to become the country most vulnerable. So many factors like global warming and deterioration of area quality, uncontrolled and anarchic urbanization, lack of green spaces and social amenity are all factors that make cities less and less suitable for individual well-being and social cohesion. We ask about the different strategy in the world. Here I will show to you some strategy in the world. We can speak about green and blue infrastructure, urban agriculture, urban oasis, circular city, and circular economy. In our research, we search to demonstrate that nature and vegetation are the key elements of development projects through the creation of green spaces, the conservation of biodiversity, the proper management of rainwater, the creation of corridors and cool islands. Today, cities must be retooled with new orientation and strategy that are innovative and conservative at the same time. For Tunisia, here we can say three cities: Beja, Tunis, and Sousse. And in Tunisia, the mapping of green spaces in urban areas shows a non-equitable distribution over the whole territory. Taken as an example, all the cities in the governorate of Beja in the northwest, here in Beja, we have 38 gardens, but in Sousse, we can here in Sousse, we can say we can find 30 gardens. So we can say that the city and the coast are favorite in green spaces. And here we can see the urban plan of green spaces and agriculture spaces in Sousse. And here in the south of Sousse, we have the city of Riyadh. It has 30 gardens, and this garden are appropriated by the society, like garden in agriculture garden. So what is the green strategy in Tunisia? Many strategy to define the factor of vulnerability, and here we can say different color to refer the temperature. And in Tunis, we can say the color red. So the temperature can be 29 degree, because it is very we can say that the density of this city are higher, and we can see here the diagram mention that the temperature will decrease with the with green spaces. Like a strategy from Department of Environment, Equipment and Land use planning and agriculture and water research. Here we can see the green plan of city, like the green plan of Carthage city in the north of Tunis. And our case is the archipelago of Karkna. Why? Because this archipelago is very important and very exceptional in landscape, urban and agricultural landscape. For cities that have a very close relationship with intra and extramural agriculture spaces, the plant composition is essentially agriculture. As for example, the island of Karkna, whose palm grove have been chosen for special planning, management and conservation of a natural and cultural heritage. So here we can say the archipelago of Karkna in the southeast of Tunisia. And here the map of the different area, the different agriculture area, and the color blue represent with coast. And here we can see the different activity do it with the palm of with the palm leaves. And our research is to find a solution in this archipelago, in this island, because it is in the bad condition and in vulnerability. I speak French more than English. I'm sorry. Karkna Island represents our field of study in the framework of Mediterranean AVGP, green infrastructure and rainwater management to enhance its agricultural heritage through a green infrastructure and a reasonable rain management in an urban environment with a systemic approach to takes into account the environmental dimension and how to adapt to climate change. Thank you.
Merci Saïda. Thank you very much.
Merci à vous. Je parle en français.
No, we'll keep on speaking in English for everybody. So, stop sharing. Yeah, stop sharing. No, okay. Très bien. Me. Saïda,
Yes.
si tu peux arrêter de partager l'écran.
Okay. Comment?
So, okay. In the meantime.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got some questions in the room. We're not a big crowd here, but maybe you got some questions to address to the panelists. So you're welcome to do so, or even online, people attending online. No questions. So I will have really quick questions because we don't have, we have only, let's say, 5 minutes. Okay. So one first question to Romain. How did the Swiss NGO get involved in the flood issue in Dakar? Was it planned from the beginning, or it happened, okay, while they stay there? Second question to Eleni. Is the project that you lead, the Living Lab, connected with companies, either public or private ones, that can provide technology solutions? Okay, on this step of the how after the why, if I take your own words. Another question to, and the last question for Isurika. Have you surprises with the result of the survey you lead? I mean, if yes, what would be the main, the biggest surprise you had from the result? Was it expected or totally? What would be your biggest surprise? Désolé Saïda, je n'ai pas de questions, mais c'est parce que c'était la dernière présentation et comme j'étais un peu stressé par le... Voilà. So, that's my question. Romain, if you...
Okay, so no, the Swiss NGO came, actually they were part of this progressive involvement process that I talked about. Like they were mainly called by the inhabitant groups that started to mobilize themselves in from 2005. And what is interesting here is that actually one of these inhabitants was working in a research center, agricultural research center. So he started to ask to his colleague, geographers, environmentalists, etc., what could be the causes of the floods. They started to say, okay, maybe it's rain, maybe you have to look at the groundwater table, etc. And also because of this research center was used to work with international funds, for instance. They started to say maybe you should call this kind of international funder, for instance. And in this process, they started to I mean, this guy contact one guy of the Swiss NGO, and there was a long process, and then finally some representative came into Senegal. They started to invent a project together and to investigate, but then. The Swiss NGO stayed all along the process after, and he participated to the transformation of the participatory process that I emphasized.
Okay, thank you. Eleni?
Yes. In my presentation, because of the time limit, I focused more on the what and rather on the who and the how. So I didn't present, for example, the participants of the living labs, especially the two I was referring to here in Greece. But you are very right in saying that if you do not have the providers, the people who have a stake in putting some effort in this and producing results that can be exploitable out of these solutions, then the solutions will disappear, as it happens with several other living labs or similar cases. Yes, we do have the technology providers and the companies, not in each living lab, but we made an effort to have a balanced participation in each living lab with the stakeholders involved. Not all living labs have an ICT company or an ICT partner who can provide the technology. And that's why we are focusing, what I mentioned in my last slide, on 5 use cases where we will produce technological results out of the living labs in collaboration with small companies, most preferably from the region. And the aim is to have the products also tested while the living labs are still, or while the project is still running, actually. For us, we are an ICT organization. We are a research organization focusing on ICT. So we are developing solutions. We are a solutions provider in this case, an innovation provider in this case. But for one of the living labs, we collaborate with the American Farm School of Grids, who implements all the sensors and also collaborates with companies who provide and set up the LoRa network, LoRa sensors in the region.
Thank you very much. Really clear answer. And Isurika, if possible, sorry, in really few seconds, your main surprise after the survey results.
Yes, actually, there are 3 surprises. Let me brief them. The first one was the demographic, the gender dimension of the participation. It was like 1 to 5 ratio, right? So 15% from the male and 85% of participation for the survey from the female, maybe because most of the female students are having kind of sentimental relationship with the nature, and maybe because the male students didn't want to click on the link and spend about 20 minutes writing something on the jot form. And the second one was actually the participatory aspects came from the female students. They actually mentioned that there are programs, run by many societies, like we have like many nature conservation societies at the university, but the female students felt like that they were not much involved in that. And there are many like programs done by university administrators. Recently also they had like planting indigenous trees, indigenous plants at the university, herbal plants. But that was done for the administratives, like academicians and non-academic staff, they are having programs, but students are not having that much program, and the programs are run by male students most of the time, and they would just invite their colleagues, and female students felt that they are left out of these participatory aspects. And the third one is actually they were really happy that their voices are concerned, and at least they had this jot form to write down how they perceive and feel about the university nature. Usually they write down answers for the question papers, not regarding this nature and how they feel and how they actually utilize the nature at the university. So those 3 were the surprisingly and a kind of futuristic prospective answers that I got for the jot form survey. Thank you for the interesting question.
Thank you very much. Sorry again, Saida, for not having a question for the moment, but I guess we go on exchanging after the session. Now I got to close the session, unfortunately, because the next one is close to our room. Thank you very much. My name is Sylvain. I'm from Common Space and the organizing committee of this conference. Thank you, Yanis and Elena, for the technical supports. And see you again, I hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the nice session.
Thank you.